time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Welcome to Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. We believe that retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. Well, I'm your host, Jared Sebest. I'm the co-founder of Retire Repurposed alongside Ben Tejas. Thank you so much for joining us today. Maybe you found us on the radio, maybe you found us online. Regardless, head over to iTunes, find our podcast, click subscribe, and if you would, just leave us a quick positive rating and review. If you would just take a moment and do that, we would appreciate that so much. Now, this podcast is all about retirement, but it's not about money. It's about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. Few people can just flip the switch from working a career 30, 40 plus years, having a schedule, having an identity, and then just shutting it off on Retirement Friday without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. If you want more for your life and your retirement, then you have come to the right place. Well, on this episode, we continue our series on retirement personality types. There's no one-size-fits-all equation for a great life or a great retirement. Everyone has been created differently and owns a unique set of life experiences. Today, we take a deep dive look at the Beaver. Beavers are hardworking and love getting tasks done. In this podcast, Ben explains how the get things done attitude of a beaver needs to have a healthy way to enjoy rest, yet have new ways to learn and express themselves. Enjoy this episode. All right, folks, we are back and we're continuing this series on retirement personalities. We've had a lot of feedback on these shows. I sure hope that you have been enjoying these shows, but I think that this is really connecting with a lot of people. We've got another great show here today as we talk about the Beaver. Now, just a reminder before we get started, we've got a brand new Facebook group called Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. We've got a growing community of people that refuse to accept the typical American dream retirement. Look for more tips on living repurposed, special content, Facebook Live, Q&As, but you got to go to facebook.com and search Becoming Repurposed in Retirement to join this growing community of people that want to make their retirement more than the average typical American dream retirement. Ben Tejas joins me on the show here, Ben, and we started this mini-series now a couple of shows ago. We talked about the importance of knowing thyself. That's kind of the first step in really, having a great retirement. It's not just turning on your Social Security and now doing nothing. There's so much more to that, and it kind of starts here.
Yeah, we started this. We had that show. We talked about how we're all created in God's image, right? And our personality profiles are a big part of how He made us. And understanding how we're made and looking at our own personality and then understanding how that translates into how we, see retirement, how we see life is really important. So this has been, I have gotten more feedback on these shows than really any in the past. So this has been good.
We talked about how we wanted the one-size-fits-all answer for retirement, and it just doesn't happen that way. And you know what? That's a good thing because, again, we're all created in God's image, but with, special DNA. We're all different and our personalities are different. And so it's going to affect us differently. The way that we view retirement is going to be different for everybody. The way that we view leisure, the way that we view work. There's a lot of things at play here. So I think it's important that everybody understand as much as they can about themselves. That's going to give you the best chance at really making this thing, retirement, really as good as it can possibly be. We landed on the 4 animal personality test. So we've been basing our research off of that particular personality test. And this is something that I've encouraged people to take. And guess what? You can take it yourself. You go to the Facebook group and I've got links pinned to the top of that page where you can take the test and you can find out what animal you are. There's 4. You can be a lion, an otter, a golden retriever, or a beaver. Ben, you're a lion. I'm an otter, and it just so happens that we covered those two animals over the last 2 shows.
Yeah, those were super fun. Fun for me to kind of give you a hard time and vice versa, because I know, being a lion, retirement's going to be tough for me. It's going to be tough for me to really walk away from something. I do find a lot of identity in work. I find kind of myself someday probably struggling with that. But again, I don't plan on ever just walking away and doing nothing. I don't plan on living the quote unquote American dream. So I know I'm going to have to keep more the next thing, the exciting things coming, and I'm excited for that someday.
Yeah, and even if you are a lion and you decide to retire, you got to make retirement something to conquer, because that's how you viewed life and work, is just, it's another thing to to dominate and to be successful in. That's a phenomenal trait. But I got to tell you, if a lion just steps into retirement and does it the way that it's kind of portrayed in society, boy, a lion is really going to struggle.
Yeah, going to struggle big time, because you're set up for failure. You're set up when society says retire, kind of move aside, right? Let younger people take over. You're no longer a relevant part of society. That, unfortunately, if you're retired today, that's what society tells you.
Yeah.
It's like, move out of the way. In fact, companies today have rules where people in their 60s have to move out of management. So I find a problem with that, and I think if you're a lion out there, really anybody, you should also struggle with that.
Last week we talked about the otter. Now that it was my turn, because I am a self-proclaimed otter. Very different personality type. These people are a little bit more, I don't want to say personable, but they are more social, definitely more emotionally driven. I think that's a big aspect of otters. We talked about how they're a little bit more high frequency. They stay busy. They want their freedom. They got to have adventure. And again, kind of sizing this up with American retirement, where now all of a sudden you just walk away and you're supposed to do little to nothing. Otters are really going to struggle with retirement as well, if it's not done correctly.
Not only that, Jared, but an otter's got to remember that the guardrails and work, as they created the boundaries for them, they're going to struggle a little bit with when they're gone, right? They're going to have almost too much freedom. Freedom's a great thing in retirement, but if I'm an otter, I'm going to be chasing this all over the place, and I got to stay somewhat, aligned with my purpose.
Yeah, you got to be dialed in, and you got to be in it for the long haul. And otters are a little bit more fast paced, and it's not a sprint. It's a marathon run, and so you've got to know that if you are an otter. Now, what we've been covering on the shows here is just a smidgen of all the research that we've done. So if you've gone onto the Facebook group page and you've taken the test and you are a lion or an otter, I want you to email me at jared@retirerepurposed.com. Put in the subject line what animal you are, and what I'm going to do is I'll email you all of our research, because there's a lot more that we've got in PDF form than what we're just mentioning here. Again, take the test and then email me, jared@retirerepurposed.com, and then put in the subject line what animal you are, and I'll send you all the research. All right, so today, Ben, we're going to talk about the beaver. Now, me and you are neither beavers, but I think we can still kind of speak into this, and there's a lot of beavers out there. In fact, it's another very specific personality. As you build a team, you got to have a few of everybody. It can't be full of lions, can't be full of otters. On our team, we've got some beavers that are good at what they do, but very different from us. So let's start by just kind of going over what is a personality type of a beaver.
Yeah, I think of a beaver, I think of somebody who actually reads the instruction manual, Jared. They not only read it, but they follow it really closely. All the details, they love details. They're very analytical. I see them as setting also very high standards, both for themselves, but also for the people around them. They follow through, but they definitely have the ability and really the natural desire to follow directions and to get stuff done.
Yeah, I would say very detail-oriented, like you mentioned, and I think it's pretty interesting that the creators of this personality test, they found animals that really, really represent these personalities well. Because again, I think of an otter as being, again, high energy, kind of bopping around real fast. Lions obviously do their thing. Beavers are more meticulous. If you've ever seen a beaver dam, I don't know how these animals have the ability to make these things. I don't think they bought them at IKEA, but somehow can manage to put all of these pieces together, and they're probably working at a pace slower than an otter, but being very methodical. I think that's probably another word that would describe a beaver.
Yeah, and I think even a motivation to get things done, right? The desire to kind of not only be right, but have a great quality product when they're done. I think of a beaver, I'm thinking, yeah, they're building that beaver dam, and it's consistent work, and it will get it done, and I'll follow my procedures, and I will get this accomplished.
They're very slow-paced, like we said, task-oriented, but that can kind of be their downfall as well, because they have a few natural weaknesses as well.
Yeah, I look at the natural weaknesses. The biggest one probably just being really hard on themselves. They feel like they probably fail more often than what they really do. I think if you're a beaver and you're hearing this, I think you also probably need to hear that you might be too critical of others because they don't follow the same pathway. I mean, that's true for all animal types, personality types, but definitely a beaver, because you're used to following kind of a certain set of rules and standards. When other people don't live up to those, I think that can cause some problems.
Yeah, they can be perfectionistic, which again can be a really good thing in work, certainly, where we are very detail oriented. But I think that there is a balance, and we probably have all experienced that, where you take something and you try to make it so good that now you've crossed over into the threshold of now we're kind of getting into the unhealthy range, where we're now over analyzing things. And also too, you can almost be paralyzed by trying to make the right decision. I think beavers are very, very cautious, and so you can almost overthink something. And you've had these interactions. I've had people come up to me and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying a new truck," and they will spend hours and hours and hours looking at every single spec, looking at every single customer review, looking at every single consumer report. And by the time they actually get down to making a decision, the year is gone. And now the new model has come out, and it's like you've now taken this decision and almost pushed it into the red zone too far.
Yeah, it's like paralysis by analysis. You hear people that just get stuck, right? And they want every bit of information and need to follow, and they want to make the right choice. And that's exactly what you're describing. Probably the type of person that like to help people organize your life, not to rush into anything. I love looking at these animal types and trying to see people in my own life. And man, we've got some beavers on our team here that have helped so much. Me being a lion, just help me put things in its place, not rush into things too much, and really just make sure that that they're finding their own place within the organization, and they get stuff done.
Yeah, they're less emotional, and that's where me as an otter probably need that type of person in my life who can kind of weed through the emotions, just look at the facts. But they also need kind of their own space and need some reassurance that they're doing the right thing. Because as you mentioned earlier, they can kind of beat themselves up over it. Again, I can even think of these friends I've been mentioning that will, they'll overanalyze a purchase to death and over again. And then when they finally make the decision, it's almost like they feel like they're making the wrong decision. So again, it's that way that they're wired to look at information and data, but again, kind of maybe taking it a little too far. Let's talk about retirement. All right, so they're leading up to retirement. They're viewing retirement in the near, in the near sight. It's coming up. What are some things that are kind of on their mind?
Well, the biggest thing is, did I think of everything, right? If you're a beaver, it's like I've got to have everything perfectly well organized. And I think this can be a great thing, but it also can cause some of, again, what we talked about earlier, some of that analysis paralysis. They really begin just being super deliberate in saving, right? They're big on creating a nest egg, but as retirement gets closer, I think they can become really single focused. I mean, doing almost over research at times, and really wondering, have I done it right? They don't want to make a mistake, and they worry a little bit more than some of the other animals we've been talking about.
I can even think of times that I've overthought decisions I've made. I can even think back to when I was playing basketball in college. I had a bad habit of missing easy shots. That was kind of like my thorn in my side, right? I would have an easy shot, an open bucket, a layup, and lots of times, or not lots of times, many times, maybe hopefully not most of the time, you'd miss the bunnies, right? And I remember the coach saying, just play, just do what you do. And it seems like anytime that we overthink and overanalyze, we can almost get in our head. And what I've noticed is when I've done that or gone through seasons of that, it kind of sucks the joy out of it. So I can see how where you get into retirement or retirement's approaching, most Beavers have probably saved. They've analyzed all the data. They've analyzed the facts. They're thinking about, they're making sure all their T's are crossed, I's are dotted. But you're going into a season which now should be a phenomenal season, a fulfilling season, an enjoyable, passionate season, and their demeanor probably could maybe struggle with that and not be as joyous at what it could be or should be.
Yeah, and be thinking of, I should have thought of that. I should have thought of this. I should have thought of that. And becoming, again, very self-critical on decisions they've made. And I think a big need they'll have, so if you're listening to this and you know a Beaver, they need space and they need reassurance that they're doing things right.
All right, so now once a Beaver has reached retirement, what are some things that they're going to go through?
Well, again, I think the struggles will arise when, kind of this routine that they've had, they start to see this new sense of freedom. And almost, again, the freedom becomes like, oh, am I even using all my time enough?
Right.
I'm almost struggling because I have too much free time. So I'm trying to fill it up, and then I almost get worried with, am I doing retirement right? Mm-hmm. We'll actually have people who will be concerned about, am I doing it right?
Right. Well, I could just think about, again, the American dream retirement is that now I can not work. I can have total freedom. I can do whatever I want. I can do as much as I want or as little as I want. To somebody who's wired at a high frequency, like an otter, myself, or like a beaver, even though their wiring is just a little bit differently, I can see how that would be a big struggle. And this probably weighs on them pretty heavily mentally.
Yeah, think about this. I should be doing something or I'm lazy. That's the thought, Jared, that is going to be working through their head in retirement. Like, I should be doing something. I'm a lazy person. This doesn't fit me well. And while there is some of that increased rest in retirement is really important, and we do want retirees to be active in doing things, we have to realize that the restful side is still important. And more importantly than that is making sure they're making time for people.
Sometimes we've even seen how beavers, while they have been savers, generally speaking, over the years, building up for retirement. Again, generally beavers are good at just kind of putting their nose to the grindstone, doing the work, doing the right thing, slow, steady, wins the race, methodical. Sometimes with their struggles, they can almost kind of revert back to more of a splurge spender. And we've seen that in the past too, where it's like you almost kind of revert to something that it's almost kind of opposite. So I think that's an important point that beavers need to understand about themselves, is that if they're not careful with understanding this and understanding themselves, they'll almost kind of revert back to the opposite in a lot of ways. That kind of goes against how they've normally been behaving. Ben, you talked about spending time with others and how important that is. Why don't you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think a struggle can arise real easy in that the beaver will just want to be alone. I mean, really, and cut themselves off from really the others in their life. So, one of the things that beavers can struggle with just in their working careers is like, nobody else is doing it right. I know how to do this by myself, right? So they have to allow themselves to be led. But also, once they're in retirement, realize that you will be able to isolate yourself. If you want to, just go off and do your thing and kind of get away from people. It's pretty easy in retirement.
Right.
So I'm going to challenge you to say, no, I still have to realize the value that others bring to me. Other people can make me actually more creative. Other people can make sure that I am in community with others. We're not created to be a completely isolated person.
Yeah, and I think that can also be a very healthy thing. If you're married to a beaver and he or she is retiring, I think giving them some space just to kind of be alone is good, but being alone just to isolate, bad. Use that time to grow. Use that time to learn new things, learn new traits, pick up new skills. That's going to connect with a beaver really well.
Yeah, and with all of this, I mean, we're trying to help you understand how you look at life, how you're wired, right? So there will be times where you're hearing something like, I know a beaver, I'm married to one, let's say, and you're like, I know now that I have to give them space. Mm-hmm. Or if you're listening to this and you're a beaver, you might think, I have to be careful that I don't get too isolated, because again, those are things that will make your retirement, less fulfilling.
How these personality types view leisure is something that we've covered each and every show. Bottom line, sometimes leisure is hard for a beaver.
Yeah, your leisure for a beaver takes a lot of work. Things actually have to be planned with an understanding of what to do should anything change. So they want to have a plan in with their leisure. I think a huge thing for beavers when it comes to leisure is that leisure for a beaver is more in the learning than it is in the non-doing. Right. So many times we look at leisure just not doing anything. Their leisure, it can't look like just not doing anything. It is some part of it is accomplishing just through learning new things.
Yeah, and again, what a great time for a beaver is to retire, because again, if it's done correctly and you know this about yourself, this can be a phenomenal time, because we want retirement to be something that brings out more of who you are. You know what I mean? And so again, I think that's going back to the beginning of this conversation, why this is so important. If you understand who you are, then you can leverage retirement to actually allow you to walk into fullness on how God created for you. And again, that's what it's all about. Let this time be kind of an extension of who you are.
Yeah, leisure for a beaver, it's a new creative expression. So that might be learning to cook, do something new. It might be new artistic work, doing things that in the past you just couldn't find time for. Right. Again, a beaver, don't think that they're always necessarily working all the time, but they have to be doing something all the time. So again, leisure might be okay, but it's just not going to look like just not doing things.
Right. And again, I like how all of these are different. Go back to the lion, Ben. How, the view on retirement there is like, I have to conquer. I've got to find something to dominate, a big project, leading a team, leading a nonprofit, or something like that, or being on a board. It's something big. The otters, they just need the people involved. And if they're not done right, they can kind of sink into isolation. Beavers are similar but different, where they just need to redirect the energy, and they're all kind of similar, but there are some nuances that really separate these two, and I think that's why this conversation is so important and so fun here today.
Yeah, and Jared, I would say if I've got to leave a beaver with anything, is that you have to be present. We've talked about this, when we get busy and we begin to think too much about our tasks before people, beavers can do that too. So being present and then recognizing the value of social interaction. And then I think realizing that busyness is good, doing new things, learning things is great, but you still have to make sure that you're taking time to rest, right? Learn new things, enjoy your retirement, but also make sure you're enjoying the rest part.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed this conversation on the beaver personality type. Again, beavers are hardworking and task-driven, so a retirement filled with endless free time, a wide-open schedule, and a permanent vacation feel, that is not going to work for this personality type. Beavers need to be okay with not always moving and understand this is not being lazy. But this is where a beaver's faith can grow. Can a beaver be okay with just being still? I think they can. But for this to happen, a beaver needs to be highly secure with themselves, and their identity needs to be deeply rooted in faith. Just a reminder, to find out which animal type you are, take the free test by going to our Facebook page, Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. Go to facebook.com and search Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. And once you join, you're going to see a post with a link right at the top of the page to take the 4 animal personality test totally free. And here's the thing, once you get your results, email me at jared@retirerepurpose.com. That's Jared, Jerrid, @retirerepurpose.com, and put in the subject line which personality type you are. Are you a lion, an otter, a beaver, or a golden retriever. Once I get that email, I'll send you all of our research right to your inbox, totally free. Next week, we're going to cover the final personality type, the golden retriever. We look forward to connecting with you then. Until next time, I'm Jared Sebesta. Remember, don't retire, become repurposed. We'll see you then.
Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through an Avantax affiliated insurance agency.